Let's take a look at the Midwest right now. As you can see from this picture, um, it looks a lot like the Great Plains, and that's because much of it is. And let's put that in our vocabulary right from the very beginning. We've got plains, large area of nearly flat land, just like the Great Plains, and prairies, lands that are covered with tall grass and very few trees. And we see that picture right here. When we talked about the Great Plains, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about here in the Midwest. Also, Badlands, a heavily eroded, dry region of colorful, sculpted rock formations. And that's mostly up in the Dakotas, which, if you remember, the Canadian Shield came down into this area a little bit, and so you're going to see those kinds of formations as you go north into the Canadian Shield. It won't look like the Great Plains. But having said that, really there's two sections to this region. We have the Great Plains where they produce a lot of um, natural products, food. We have wheat, corn going on here, cheese, meats, and in fact, Chicago is going to be a very important city because of all these things. We're going to have industrial base over here with Detroit, Michigan, Ohio, Indianapolis, and then you're going to have a lot of natural resources coming out of the western part of the Midwest. So let's take a closer look at the states. First of all, Ohio probably going to be easy to remember. Michigan looks very weird, like this catcher's mitt with peninsula, so that's easy to remember. Wisconsin almost looks like Michigan, except it's got a thin thumb here. Minnesota has a point here, so that is also unique. Missouri has a little notch here at the bottom. So those are states that are probably easy to remember. Um, if you can get down this row right here, of course, North Dakota's in the top, followed by South Dakota. Nebraska's got this notch here, and then Kansas is the most rectangular looking state that we've got going on here. That leaves us with three states, the three I's, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. Illinois is the biggest one, it's got the most letters. Iowa's the shortest, and it looks kind of short. It looks like it's been chopped off. And then Indiana is the little brother to Illinois. They look very similar, but Indiana is smaller and farther east. So in the eastern part of the Midwest, we have things like Detroit, where they make a lot of cars, Columbus, where there's also a lot of industry there, and then Indiana is famous for the Indy 500 and Indianapolis. So when you're thinking cars, you think this part of the country. Then in Wisconsin, a lot of dairy. They're famous for their cheeses. I know somebody that's from Wisconsin, and he's going back, and he can't wait to get his hands on all sorts of different cheeses that they got up there. They're so famous for it that one of their cities, Green Bay, the Green Bay Packers, if you watch their games, people wear cheese on their heads. They're called the Cheeseheads. Um, so that's not an accident. Illinois, and you got the city of Chicago, which is like Atlanta. It's a main hub, but not necessarily for air as much as Atlanta is, even though it is a very large airport. But you remember the Great Lakes are connected to the St. Lawrence River, and then it goes out to the Atlantic Ocean. So a lot of products are flowing this way out into the ocean, but also are flowing this way. We've got a canal that connects, I believe it's the Illinois River, that goes to the Mississippi River, and then goes out to the Gulf of Mexico. So Chicago has a lot of waterways, and because of that, they put the main hub for the railroads in Chicago. So everything goes in and out of Chicago when it comes to railroads, which means that for a very long time, Chicago was the center of gravity in this part of the country. So it's a very important city. So since we're talking about Chicago, let's take a look at our other cities. We've got Detroit, which is famous for cars, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Uh, were totally based out of Detroit for a while, and now they're spreading out across country, but they're still centralized in Detroit. In fact, it's called the Motor City. And if you ever heard of a music company called Motown, they started in Detroit, and they have a very distinct cultural sound, an American sound coming out of Detroit. Chicago, as we said, is a main hub. And our third city is going to be St. Louis, right over here. It's right on the the intersection of the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. So you could see that it is a very important city for anybody moving along these rivers. In fact, it is called the Gateway. That this is the arch, the Gateway to the West Arch. Hold on a second. I don't want to mess this up. The Gateway Arch is the centerpiece of the city. It represents the gateway to the west. So people like Lewis and Clark, anybody that was going out west before the country was really developed, all this was undeveloped, unknown land. And so St. Louis was the last big city that they would see before they would venture out into the unknown. And that's why they call it the Gateway to the West. And that's why they have this arch. Let's see, went over Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit. Okay, so we're good. So this is a very productive region um, for a lot of natural resources, a lot of food, and also for industrial products like cars. And this makes a lot of sense because remember, right over here is a city called Pittsburgh. They make a lot of steel, and so you're going to make cars either with steel or whatever metals they're producing over here. So all these railroads going into Chicago, Detroit, they're really going to help these cities grow and become very important in our history.